Despite making 6 figures and having a very stable career, I would go home every day feeling like an imposter. I booked a one-way ticket to Seoul.
Lights out, I'm your favorite. Too many ways been in your
Everyone, my name is Jenny and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share why I left bedside nursing and how I ended up moving across the world from New York City to Seoul, South Korea. So I graduated nursing school in 2020 and started my nursing career in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I went right into med-surg as a brand new baby nurse, and I was also located in New York City, which became the epicenter of the pandemic. So the patients I was seeing at the time was mostly surgical oncology patients, plus cardiothoracic patients, plus general medicine. And when the third wave of the pandemic hit, our unit was a designated non-COVID unit. So that means whatever patient we had who became COVID positive, we would send to a COVID designated unit. And that was until one day I showed up to work to all these isolation precautions slapped all over the unit. And I was like, what is going on? And without a single heads up, without even an email, our unit had overnight flipped to a non-designated COVID unit, to a fully COVID patients only unit. And at the time, I was still living at home with my mom, who is older, and she also has a couple medical conditions that put her at increased risk for COVID-19. So you can imagine my surprise when I walk in and I'm just handed a list of COVID patients. So we're fully suited up, like double gowned, I'm wearing like an N95 mask plus a regular surgical mask. I have my eye mask on, my scrub cap, I'm like fully gowned up. And every day I would come home and I would isolate myself from the rest of my family because I didn't want to put them at risk. Technically, COVID patients should be in a negative pressure room, but when there's such a high influx of COVID patients, we just don't have the resources available to be able to do that. Every room is doubled up and each patient is only divided by a single curtain. And as nurses, we do our charting in the hallways. Like none of these doors are closed. So even me and the COVID patients are only divided by a single curtain. So even when I'm sitting down to relax, I can't really take off my PPE and feel safe doing so. I would see patients who seem fine and stable one day and the next day they pass. I witnessed my first patient death. I would have to bag them up. And there was also this weird power struggle in my hospital between CNAs and RNs. So even when I needed help, it would take me longer to find a CNA than it would for me to just do everything. There was so much turnover in my med-surg unit. I remember even the managers couldn't even stay. So we would have long lapses of time without a manager. But I remember Christmas Day, I was working and they said, Jenny, just letting you know, you will be the most senior nurse on the unit today. And I was like, I have 6 months of experience. What are you talking about? And I remember just feeling so scared and feeling so unsupported. I can't rely on any CNAs for help. I don't have a manager to go to. I have no one above, no senior nurses even, whether I like them or not. Like they're not even there. So I just remember feeling so like thrown in the deep end. And on top of them giving us like double the patient load we're used to. So when I first started, I was given 4 patients, and by the time I quit, it doubled up to 8 patients. So it was like a lot. And I remember I would come home and feel so defeated. I would come and like look at my toothbrush and would be like, I don't even have the strength in me to pick up that toothbrush and brush my teeth. So for the first time in my life, I was experiencing symptoms of depression. On my days off, I physically could not do anything. I was just one with my bed. I just remember feeling so empty. I felt like a shell of myself and I would dread going to work. I would wake up in the morning at like 8 a.m. As soon as I opened my eyes, I would start crying because I knew I would have to go into work that day. So all that to say, I lasted around 6 months. I think I burnt out after 2. So by the end, I was really questioning, is this career for me? If I'm struggling this much to feel happy or even just like myself while I'm working, then is this really the job that's fit for me? And honestly, at the time, I was ready to just quit nursing entirely. If I could barely last 6 months in this career, how am I supposed to do this for the next 40 years of my life? So I took a break for a little while. I worked on healing, I started therapy, and just realigning my mental and physical health, and was just really reflecting on whether I wanted to continue this career or not. And towards the end of my break, I realized, you know what, I put a lot of effort into getting this nursing degree. You know, it wasn't easy. And I remember my favorite clinical during my clinical rotations was L&D. And so I decided, let me just give nursing one more shot before I completely throw this degree away. So I ended up applying to only L&D jobs throughout the New York City area. And I got an interview. And in that interview, the NICU manager also sat in. And after my very long and extensive interview, I was invited to do a tour of both units. So I did a tour of the L&D unit and the NICU unit. And during those tours, I was allowed to sit and talk with some of the nurses that were working on the unit. After deliberating, after speaking to the units and just feeling out the vibe of each unit, I just decided the NICU was probably a better fit for me, considering how much I burnt out from the med-surg environment. Even though the NICU is considered an ICU unit, it was a lot more structured, a lot more predictable, and I just felt like I could align better with having a more routine. So about 6 months after I quit my first med-surg job, I ended up working in the NICU unit in a different hospital in New York City. Honestly, in the beginning of my NICU career, I was really struggling. I was essentially a new grad nurse all over again. I was struggling with imposter syndrome. I had such low confidence in my skills and in my knowledge. My nervous system was like so broken. Every little alarm felt like life or death. I think it took me like a year to realize that the alarms had different sounds for different priorities. And I think biologically, the sound of babies crying does something to like the human body to incite a response. I mean, that's like survival, you know? So it was difficult for me to feel like I could provide reassurance to both the baby and the parents when I could barely regulate my own emotions. Having to work night shifts in general is also tough, just on your physical body and in your mental health. I remember I would go days without seeing sunlight. There was a day when my boyfriend had suggested to me like, hey, why don't you go outside for a walk? And I remember telling him, if I leave my apartment, I'm going to die. Like word for word. I remember saying that and feeling that to be true. And at the time, I moved from Long Island to Brooklyn to be closer to work when all my friends were in Queens. So if you're from New York, you kind of know there isn't a lot of accessible public transit between the two boroughs. So I was kind of isolated. And so every day I came home exhausted and I would just essentially eat my feelings. And I think just despite moving to a new hospital and a new unit, I still felt this nagging sense that I didn't really feel very aligned with the work I was doing. And I just want to share a poem which I think encapsulates how I felt at the time. And it goes like this. Crying. It is the sound of my soul, desperate and in utter despair. Crying. The baby demands the milk to be brought, the belly to be rubbed, the butt to be cleaned. How did I end up here? Feeding babies at the dead hour of the night, not knowing their names, their genders, or where they've come from. And I do not care. My mom says I should pray for each baby whose skin I touch. I tell her no. They are fine. I'm the one who is unwell. There is a disconnect between my soul and theirs. They try to communicate, and I shut down. All I want to do is run and hide, and scream and cry, and sleep and eat like a normal human. To keep the baby alive is to suffocate the spirit within me that gives me life, and light, and joy, and hope. I am an imposter. I do not belong here. I was not made for this. I felt like I was doing someone else's job. I felt like I was doing something that anyone else could do. I felt like I was wasting my potential. I feel like I had unique things that I could offer to the world that I wasn't utilizing in this role, where I felt like maybe other people could be in this role and they would feel so much happier and so much more fulfilled than I did. But I think the most painful part of it all was feeling stuck. I just didn't feel like it was an option for me to quit my job. So just as I was feeling more and more hopeless, my boyfriend at the time decided to break up with me kind of out of the blue. We had been dating for almost 2 years, and on top of being physically away from both my friends and my family, and the mental health toll that my job was taking on me, I had relied on my boyfriend pretty heavily at the time to kind of cope with the stress of all of these transitions. And so when he just left at the drop of a hat, it was very traumatic. And so here I am working this job that I feel like is sucking the life out of me, and now my biggest support system has now just evaporated. And I think that just overall moment of trauma really woke me up. It just felt like a cold splash of water, and it was a huge wake-up call. I just felt this overall sense of what the hell am I doing and why am I here? Why am I living so far away from my friends, so far away from my family, so far away from my church, my community? What am I doing here, and why am I going to a job every single day if I hate it? I feel like I'm losing my personality. I feel like I'm losing my spark. Is it really worth losing my soul for a paycheck? I don't even need to be paid. I don't have any dependents. Like, what am I even doing this all for? And also, funny enough, because of my breakup, I was having an easier time at work. Because I had so much to process in the breakup, when I came up to work, I just stopped taking everything personally. And so whenever an attending was like being difficult and yelling at me, in my head I was just like, I don't care. I'm just here to do my job. As opposed to before where I'd be like, oh my god, like, why are you yelling at me? Like, what do I do? At this point I was just kind of like, dude, you can yell at me all you want, regardless, like, we're working together. And that actually helped me so much to just cope with the majority of the stress I felt at work. On top of, I switched from night shift to day shift. And so overall, I just was doing better at work. After a couple of months of processing that breakup, I felt like God really took my grief and gave me hope to dream again. And so by this time, I was just feeling really inspired, feeling like I really wanted just like a fresh start. I booked like a vision trip to LA and just to feel out the vibes to see if I wanted to move there. And it was honestly such a great trip. I met with a lot of friends and old mentors, but there was just something within me that I just felt like the energy of the city was just not what I needed in that moment. I also wanted something that was going to be a challenge. I wanted an opportunity to really grow because I had felt so stuck for the past couple of years working these tough nursing jobs. And of course, moving to a city alone is in and of itself a challenge, but I just felt like the timing of LA was just not now. And it was right around this time that my friend suggested, what about moving to Korea? She basically pitched the idea of, hey, if I move to Korea, would you come with me? And within that single conversation, I was sold. I was like, when are we moving? When should I pack up my bags? Should I look up pizza stuff right now? She was like, wait, whoa, 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 whoa. This is just an idea. This is just a what if scenario. I'm not actually moving to Korea. And I was just like, wait, what? And I went home that day. I had suggested it to my family, and to my surprise, my family was fully supportive. So I brought it up to all of my coaches, all of my mentors, and again, everyone was just fully supportive. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. I thought I would face more resistance than I did. And so the idea was suggested to me in June. I gave myself until the end of July to decide. And before settling on Korea, I was considering Australia, I was considering Hong Kong, Shanghai. But ultimately, I settled on Korea because I have not a lot, but I do have some family members here. And I've also just been to Korea before. I felt confident on the vibe of the city, feeling confident of just being able to picture my life in Korea. I feel like it could really push me to grow in new ways. Every time I thought about it, I felt 설레해 in Korean, which basically means really like excited, but in a way that makes you feel like giddy. I think all of those factors on top of feeling really supported by everyone around me, just feeling really good about work as I left, I think just were all just green lights of me coming to Korea. So again, this is like around August, and gave myself 2 months to work my ass off and save. I started picking up every single overtime shift I could because I was laser focused on making as much money I could so that I could do a full year abroad. But I think just overall knowing that I had a plan, that I had an exit strategy, as one would say, I didn't feel stuck anymore. It made me feel really motivated and made me feel like I had a sense of purpose. So when October rolled around, I threw a party and spent a lot of time with my friends and loved ones before finally embarking on my journey to Asia. I booked a one-way ticket to Seoul. As soon as I came, I went immediately and did a 3-week solo trip to China, and that was a whole other adventure on its own. And so that kind of brings us up to speed to where I am now. I've been in Seoul for about 9 months, and I currently work as a translator for a skincare clinic. So I'm not currently in a nursing role, but I may go back to nursing when I come back to the States, but I'm not too sure what that's going to look like. So I had originally planned to be here for about 1 month, and right now I'm at the 9-month mark, and I have since renewed my time here, so I'll be here for another year until July 2026 or so. But who knows? The situation changes day by day. But yeah, I think just despite all of the cultural differences and all the cultural shocks, I just feel really good being here. If you don't know about Seoul, there's mountains that surround the city. And every time I look up to the mountains, it's like the energy, the key of the land. It just like speaks to me. I feel like being in the land of my ancestors. Like I just feel really called here. And I just want to use the time to really discover who I am, what I like, before I put all of my eggs into the nursing basket and pursue a career that I'm not even sure I want or like in the first place. I actually plan to go to NP school after my 1 year time in Korea, but there's been a lot of change since then. I just decided to actually put NP school on a pause for the moment. So I may pursue grad school in the future, but I think for right now, I just want to really focus and be present in my time in Seoul. So yeah, all that to say, despite how difficult and humbling this whole experience has been, I feel really thankful throughout nursing and even through my painful breakup. I wouldn't be where I am today without all of those experiences. If you are also someone who is directionless, feeling like they don't know what they're doing in your life, I promise you, you are not alone. You have every chance to start over if you feel the need to. There is so much grace and mercy over all of our struggles. I still have no idea what I'm doing. I'm still figuring it out, but I feel like I'm in a good position right now. I feel like I'm in a place where God is inviting me to be, and I'm just really leaning into that. And I'm just figuring out like where I want to go from here, and I'm still discovering kind of why God brought me to Korea. And so yeah, thank you so much for listening and for being part of this journey already. I'm really hoping to make more videos in the future, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!
Thought that I would be a bit at peace by now. Yeah, you're lying in the shadows of my